There, it's live. There it is. There's that word. Hello, everybody.
Hey.
Welcome to our community conversation on MJ Kaufman's Sensitive Guys. I am Kenn McLaughlin. I'm the artistic director for Stages, and I'm so pleased that we're kicking off another new program and another opportunity for us to connect and converse, especially about work that is so dear to our hearts. Tonight in our conversation, really incredible team with us. We have two actors from the production, Rachel Logue and Emily Neves, and then the two brain trust that really put it together, not only in the room on the stage, but then transferred it to film. Peter Ton, who did the videography, and Leslie Swackhammer, our director. So everyone has waved. And what we want to do, folks, is we just want to have a conversation. We want to take your questions, kind of open those questions up. We have some themes that we talked about that we thought we might want to explore, but I'm already seeing questions. Here's the way we're going to do questions. If you go ahead and just send them in the chat, David Grease, Mandy Cooper, and Greg Warrington are all off behind the scenes right now managing this platform for us, and so they'll be able to grab those questions and send them forward to us so that we can answer your questions as well and see if we can get a conversation going as best we can. So welcome, and here we go. And I've got a very comment here. I loved how the topic of consent and assault were handled. Are there plans to make this available to college campuses? Such a great question. Okay, so here's the answer to that question right now. And Rachel kind of heard this earlier. Emily's going to hear it for the first time. So, in fact, we got a request from a college in Ohio to use it on their campus, to use it not only in their theater classes, but they wanted to expand it campus-wide, which is really exciting for us and exciting for the playwright. There are just some hurdles that we need to kind of work out to be able to make that happen, and that includes fair, equitable wages for the entire team who did not sign up for their work to be sent into the world in that way. So we have some things that we have to work out. We have to work out with the unions, but we're going to start working on those things tomorrow. So we're really excited about that. And if anyone out there, if any of you have watched this and you really believe, as we do, that what this play says is really important to be heard, and you have access for this kind of thing, if it does go in another life and end up in college campuses, we'd love to use you as ambassadors for that. So let us know, email us and let us know. One of the core questions that's coming up, everybody, and so to turn it over to you guys. So it's here we are at the twilight. Sensitive Guys is now done streaming. You have been through this incredible journey of rehearsing and COVID and now a documentary and putting it out. Like, how about each of you give me a little bit of reflection on the whole, like here now in this twilight of this moment, this incredibly unique artistic process. Talk about
that. First, actors, you talk.
Go ahead, Emily.
Okay, well, it's really fascinating for me because this journey began for me on my birthday last year. So that's a little more than a year ago. That was the callback, and that was kind of the first time I engaged with this material with other people. And so there was something about that night and about the energy around that callback and just all the people that were there and the energy in the room and in the hallway when everybody was rehearsing. There was something momentous about it for me personally. I just kind of felt this really alive, powerful energy. I think a lot of it was the material, but also just all the different energies of the people in the room and there. And then it was some time before we began rehearsals, but I read the play several times and I kind of learned about who the cast would be and got so excited thinking about what that room would be like. I'm already getting emotional, but working with Leslie again for the first time since Marie Antoinette in 2014, and working with Peter after a really long time. I think the last time we worked together was, gosh, I can't remember. Peter, help me.
Pretty Little White Girls, I think.
Oh yeah, well, and then this teen time is a construct,
Yeah,
especially.
time is a construct.
anyway, I guess what I'm getting at is just knowing that I was going to be in the room with these people that I had worked with, and then the anticipation and excitement of being in the room with these people that I hadn't worked with and that I had wanted to work with for years. That period of like preparing and just like getting myself like excited and psyched up to be there was great. And then like actually being in the room exceeded all of my expectations on that front, more than I ever could have imagined. And every single day that we got together, that chemistry grew, and the closeness grew. And I credit Leslie and Peter with building this team of people and putting together that cocktail of energies and that chemistry, but also for fostering an environment that, like, I mean, I'm almost speechless because of emotion, because it was something I had never experienced before as an actor. I had never walked into a room every day feeling so safe and so supported, both as a human being and as an artist, and the resources that this team and this theater brought to us to handle such intense, emotional, raw material and subject matter. There were times where it was frightening because of what we were engaging with, and our own personal journeys as people, and that sort of meeting with the material and what it brought up for all of us as women in this time. And so that was unbelievable. And then, you know, we did Suzuki, and we did Viewpoints, and we did these magical practices together apart from the text that I hadn't done since college. And so getting to be in that space again and really ground myself in my body before going into each rehearsal, I mean, I'm getting chills, like, just remembering that. So, me too. And then, sorry, I'm speechless with emotion again, but, you know, we were in the last couple of rehearsals, wow, this is surprising me. We were in the last couple of rehearsals before tech, but we were in the space. We were all together, and we were ready to like go into the tech process, which is, it's kind of like a different, you come into a different season with the piece when you do that. And we were all really excited to get to work together in the space in that new theater and bring what we had fostered and what we had created in the room together into this new sacred space and see it grow there, and how it would change and how we would drop into it in a different way physically. And then COVID interfered, and that really felt like, I think Christina Gianelli, the lighting designer, it was a death. It felt like a death. And I'm someone who's experienced a lot of personal loss and grief, and this is what that felt like. And I know a lot of people in our industry and in our art form are feeling that way right now, and I am clearly still wrestling with it every day because it's so uncertain. And it's so epitomized in this process for me. Everything that theater means to me as an artist was, this play was that. It was the epitome of all of that for me. And it's not nothing, clearly, to have this be the process that I was in as a theater artist when COVID happened. So forgive me for waxing so emotional, but and then going on, I'm rambling on far too long, but then to have that shift into this online space and to engage with each other in a different way, it was a birth. You know, I believe that it goes life, death, life, and there was a death, and then there was new life. And just to see everybody's faces and hear their voices and feel their energy coming through the screen, it to be frank, it wasn't quite as potent for me as being in the room with these people, but it was different, and it was enough. And we did it. We told this story and we made it work, and we worked together and we figured it out and we collaborated. And I mean, it is a journey. It feels like a Joseph Campbell hero's journey. It feels momentous and epic, and I've spoken for far too long, so that's all I have to say about that. Thank you for the question.
I mean,
We could unpack that for hours. Like, incredible. Thank you for sharing that. I mean,
Welcome to my TED Talk.
Joseph Campbell. I mean, like, let's take that on. Rachel, how are you feeling?
I want to just echo a lot of what Emily said, that it was a group of people who I think we all had such high levels of mutual respect for one another. I don't think there was a single individual in that room anywhere that wasn't a fan, of each other's work. So that instantly raises your personal bar. And when someone like, I've watched Emily work, I've watched Leslie's work, I've watched Peter's work from afar, or I've gone to see shows, and like, to be in the same room, you're like, oh my God, I want to be good for them. And then I think like that feeds from them as well. So you have this sort of magical thing happening of where only live theater can facilitate that. Right. But I also want to bring in the fact that it was at Stages in this new sexy building, and how very much all of us feel like it's a bit of an artistic home for us. And Ken, I found me at Sam in 2009. and so the beginning of it, the foundation of this process and this new gorgeous building after the years-long campaign to get it open, all the things that went back in the old studio and the transferred over to this new space with it, like just a level of electric, possibility. So we had all of that going in that building. And then you guys were there when the bottom fell out and the pandemic happened and our collective hearts were completely broken. These shirts came out for Harvey, but they speak to a really beautiful word that I've been meditating on a lot, which is resiliency. And I think all of our hearts were broken. We all felt so sad. We felt so lost. I felt personally adrift. And then when we talked about bringing it online, I was positive on the outside, but on the inside, I was a negative Nancy. I was not excited. I was like, this sucks.
I was freaked. I was like, what? The essence of this, like, first of all, what you don't get to see in the Zoom, but I think it comes through in other ways, was just like the immense physical transformation that everybody went through, like that, to go from being a woman to being a man. Like we worked really hard on those characteristics and everything. I mean, it comes through from here up, and it's in the attitude and it's internalized. But when Kenn first came to me with it, I was just like, oh my God, all the magnificence of their work. But, we found, the thing is, we're artists, we're creative, and we don't know how long this is going to go on. And I just had this moment with myself where I just went, look, theater is like my religious shrine. But I'm not willing to go for 9 months without being a creative, collaborative artist. I just can't do that.
Yeah.
So how else can I use what I have to make some kind of magic happen?
Well, it's really interesting. Rachel, I just want to celebrate how brilliant an actor you were, because I never saw negative Nancy. I only saw positive Diana, I guess, as positive as Diana could be. But it's interesting to note that, because that was one of the things that I think made the project special for you guys at a certain point in time, when we all decided to just name that truth, like name that this was this other thing, right? And that we're not attempting to make film. We're not filmmakers, although every one of you could be film actors, as far as I'm concerned. But we weren't attempting to do that, right? We were attempting to find our way to another kind of communication, almost a hybrid platform of communication, but still using these tools that are what we use every day. And that leads to this really great question that just popped up. I have a whole bunch of questions popping, so yay, keep asking them. We'll get to them. We'll keep going. But playing these characters, And for you guys playing characters, and Leslie and Peter for leading them to them, characters who could easily, is the way this question is set up, kind of fall into, we could judge the men in this play, especially Danny. This question is relative to Danny. Like, so Rachel, you have to play a rapist, a male rapist, right? Like, how do you approach, and what are the tools that you're putting in play to approach finding the humanity of that story? Like, and how is that? And this is for you guys both getting inside of it, because Emily, you play the complicit power male, and the two of you have to play that scene together, right? Like, what were you drawing upon to give those people the humanity that they deserve so the story works?
I love that question. I think it started, we've referenced Suzuki and Viewpoints, and we also did Laban, all different styles and techniques of theater movement and voice work. And so it started like, if you're like looking at it from a spiral, it's sort of, you start on the bigger spiral. And I felt a bit like we kind of, for me anyway, went to the stereotype, right? Like, let's work with a stereotype. And then, even though, and Leslie, you were like, no, we never wanted to go there. But for me, it was like, okay, what are the ideas of a man?
Yeah.
And, right?
We went too far. We definitely went too far at one point.
For sure. And then
all that in.
you go too far and then bring it in and bring the humanity. And I just kept going back to the text and saying, okay, he's a lawyer. He's a hardworking guy. I was mining every little like nugget MJ Kaufman was giving us about who these people were, where they came from, their perspective on the world. And as a woman, it was so like, it was hard to go into that, like, if I can say a buzzword of today, this male privilege mindset of, I just expect this thing to happen because of where I come from and and what I look like. Mm-hmm. And you can't judge it. You just can't. Like, it's hard to play somebody that makes your heart hurt and will trigger an audience member, but that's the responsibility of the actor telling the story and the director shaping that. It's like, we have to just make them real people.
But you also could find things that were like things that we don't experience that were interesting. Like when Emily's character just, blows up at Danny, like the day we were in rehearsal for that, there was so much like rage that was expressed through her body. And we all sort of went, whoa, we're women and we're not programmed. We're programmed to not express that
right.
way. Yeah. But there's something, but also just like for Danny, just like the ease that he glides through the world.
Yeah.
That we don't experience. That's not a stereotype. That's just like finding these foreign ways of living in the world that key to the characters.
Go ahead.
Just in terms of Jones, everything that you're saying reminds me of one day in rehearsal. I was having trouble finding where Jones lived. Jones, the professor, the complicit professor. So to speak to the first point about how to portray them in a way, how to connect with them in a way that's not judgmental, which is really difficult sometimes with all kinds of characters. But for me, with Jones, I was like, well, what is at stake for him? What would it cost him to be in integrity? And, I imagine this professor who he's doing this as part of his tenure portfolio. And so he has so much to lose and he believes in these young men. And so he's like, well, if I can just get them through this and I can get tenure, then we can work with this. We can,
I'll have more good to give.
Exactly. We need Danny out there. He's a good one. Yeah, he messed up, but blah, blah, blah. So there was that. But also I remember particularly one day I was working way too hard as Jones to get Danny to see my point of view. And I remember, I think about this a lot because you said something to me, Leslie, about a man, especially a man of a certain age and a certain level of authority, people just listen to him. People just listen to what he says. You don't have, and I had this like, oh my God, what must that be like to walk through the world? And when you speak, people just listen. You know, you don't have to fight for your voice to be heard. And like that really, I was like, oh my gosh, I get it now. And then now how do I breathe that in, and how do I work from that place? And it something clicked for me. Because as a woman, it's harder to find that in the world.
Well, it's interesting in the stage play, and think in this performance thing too. This question is, I'm going to conflate a couple of questions that are being asked over here. Essentially, the essence is kind of the difference between the two. And I think a way of going into that question for you guys might be to think about, because my experience, I was so blown away when I saw it. Those of you who've heard me tell the story, like I saw that last run through in that room, and it'll stay in my heart as probably the greatest rehearsal of anything I've ever seen in my life. I mean, it was clear. It was clear. I think we all knew in our hearts. I think all the performers knew in their hearts that might be it. Might be the only time. So they put their guts on the line. But that's what happened in the room, is everyone put their guts on the line. Like as audience members, it was an incredible experience. And one of the things that struck me in watching it, especially for the two characters that you guys play, Rachel, you at the end of the play, you go from Diana, who has this kind of incredible scene with Pete where she comes to this new place in herself. Then you go to is it Jones first? It's Jones first, before that, then Diana. Mm-hmm. So you're Danny, who's trying to own up to what he did, and basically gets put in this box. And then he goes to Diana. Then you go to Diana, and then you go back to Danny for the big final speech. Like, that's an incredible journey that you make. And in the play, you're doing that all on stage. Emily, what struck me was your transformation from the breakup scene. And then you go right next in the play into the scene where you really take it out on those guys, and and you watch the breakup scene, and then you watch that whole step forward stuff. It's just so powerful because you're watching these actors walk through that journey back and forth. And in film, you guys shot out of sequence. You shot the male sequences first, then the female sequences. So talk a little bit about, I think that's a way of really opening up this question of how is it different to work in film and theater, and then especially in a hybrid.
Sure. Yeah.
For me, I did miss a lot the ability to follow the through line that, for me, I found in my process as an actor is really essential. And also the full physical manifestation that we spent so much time on in all these work with the movement, that also really helped. I remember one day we had our Laban guy in there, and I was really struggling. Weirdly enough, found Danny's physicality right away, and it was Diana's and her anger that I needed help with. And so we had this it was this, I was like struggling and kind of floundering in this like angry, shouty place, and then it clicked in. But then we lose that, and I just have to sit on my bed and find Diana again. And I was scared because I needed my legs. I needed my, to be able to move around more. And I am working within the confines of being in frame, and not just in frame, but like, is it a mid frame? Is it a close up? Is it a medium shot? So that was a major challenge. And then, the missing that through line was tough, but because we were in the place that we were, and we had a couple of those like just gorgeous runs, we were able to kind of capture that. But it absolutely was tricky. I think the Jones Danny scene, we got one take.
Yeah. I was having technical issues that night.
One schedule. Well, it's interesting because Peter and I have talked about this, and Peter, you might want to, because Peter's got the most experience in film, and I just think we really benefited from having the actual in the room rehearsal with each other, as before we put this on, and we rehearsed it in an arc, So you want to talk about that a little bit, Peter, because just how you've always, your experience with film is they often don't do those rehearsals. There are some film directors that do, but
yeah, Yeah, and usually you have like one read through of the script with everybody in film, and then that's about it. And then you kind of like rehearse day of whatever scene you're doing. And so it's kind of hard trying to find the through line of this. And what was great, like Leslie, you said, was that we did rehearse in like complete chunks of the play, and oftentimes we did run throughs on Zoom to kind of like get that full story across. So when we did rehearse in chunks, we knew beforehand that we were going to do this in chunks, in different chunks out of sequence, so that we are always reminded of the moment before and keeping what that moment was and bringing that into the scene that we were filming that day.
And it helped me and Peter that we had worked on it that way, so that, as we're watching the actors calibrate their performances, we could give you the notes to get you where you would need to be to calibrate it. So, and the other essential thing I think about going into the Zoom thing was that we had built this rapport. So there was a trust. There was what I realized looking at the documentary and looking at all the footage to make the documentary was the enormous amount of goodwill the actors had and patience that we would get through there. But somebody asked about our little symbols that we were doing.
Yeah.
So that's a heart. Did we do that? How did we learn that? I always
it comes from K-pop, Korean pop. So they're like little mini hearts. So
it just means, and we also do this, that we love each other. We can't be
in the room with each other, and every time somebody had a hard time in rehearsals, or we would all hug each other and show our support that way. And since on Zoom we can't.
And and there's a couple questions about that. I mean, you did film, to answer the question, you did film independently of one another, in your own houses with all sorts of equipment. A lot of that was dictated by the union. We had there are many conversations that went into how we were going to capture it, and this is where we are as actors, right, or as a professional world right now. Actors are still working in their homes, but we made that work. They made that work. But the other question is, in terms of you were not filmed individually. You were together on Zoom having this conversation. Yes. Peter and Leslie were, off. Their cameras were turned off, but they were essentially in the room along with the costume designer and the lighting designer. Did you guys find, what about that hurdle in terms of, you're talking to each other on Zoom, playing scenes on Zoom?
Oh my goodness. I talk about this in the documentary, but you can't make eye contact. So it's weird because, making eye contact as an actor is like oxygen. That's how the scene lives, And so I tried to think of it a little bit like the way I do when I voice act and listening more. Listening is another. It's kind of like if eye contact is the oxygen, then listening is the nitrogen that makes up the other ingredients. But
you love an analogy.
But yeah, so it really, I focused a lot on hearing what they were giving me and hearing the emotion in their voice so that I could connect with them that way and get their energy that way. And but it was a challenge. It was weird. And it was also weird not to be like, what do I look like? Oh my God, my hair.
Oh God.
You know what I mean? We're all narcissists and the Zoom screen is our lake. But I stole that on Twitter. I didn't make that up. But yeah. So that was fun.
So you couldn't really go ahead, Peter. Go.
Yeah, we couldn't really film it in like a traditional film sense where we're like, okay, we're gonna get Emily's coverage and then we're gonna get Rachel's coverage. We had to do a whole scene on one go, and if something happened, some technical difficulty or glitch, or somebody went up on the line, we had to go all the way back to the beginning. And Leslie and I talked about
where Nathan walks through the room.
Yeah.
We're like, no, cut.
Or when
we were on a tight schedule.
Sorry.
How long did it take? Oh, what was it?
At one point, a bug was in Raven's room, and she freaked out. It was hilarious.
Oh my!
She's not.
Now, Peter, how long did it take you to cut it? So it was recorded out of sequence, but it was recorded in real time in terms of the scenes. So then you just cut the scenes together. Is that what you did? And talk a little bit about you and Leslie and post. Like how much time did it take you to actually then put it together?
Well, first of all, just saying post was helped immensely by pre, because Peter and I mapped out how all the scenes would be shot. So, sometimes they go into speaker view and sometimes they're in gallery view, and where everybody is on the screen. We determined that before we shot, and when we were shooting, there were things that we discovered and we changed our minds, but we had a plan going in, and I think that was really important.
And we rehearsed it that way too.
Leslie, did the actors do their own switch speaker views, or did Peter control?
Oh no, Peter controlled it.
Yeah, since I was the one recording on my computer locally, I made all these changes and called everybody on in the right order to get them in the right spots.
Yeah.
So we've got a time check. So because we could talk all night. So we'll head toward a wrap. But there's such great questions on the table right now. One of them is, what about this process will you bring with you to future projects?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That is a good question. Depends on what the future looks like, I guess. I mean,
we're going to get back to theater. We're going to be back in those rooms.
Yeah. Well, I hope to do, Suzuki and Viewpoints and Laban and every one of my processes going forward. I hope.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm like bringing them back for sure.
Do you guys think this is off that question? Like, all of us have. There's been lots of conversation about the way time has shifted in the COVID reality, right? Time has shifted for us. Do you guys believe, as theater artists, that we have understanding of time and the shift of time and taking that stress out of a rehearsal process is going to stay with us? Do you think?
I hope so. I hope that we can have a real dialogue about labor issues in theater, and back-to-back 10 out of 12s, and working 6 days a week. I mean, I hope that that's a conversation that we have going forward, just as human beings and from a work-life balance perspective. I mean, theater's hard and it takes a lot of time, but I just wonder if we can talk about at what point it becomes a diminishing return. So
yeah, I think it's a just to jump off what you're saying, Emily, that this took everybody's idea of what had to be a certain way and just threw it, crumpled it up, ripped it, lit it on fire. And, because you have every industry making it work from home. Yeah. And as we've seen, theater really has to be in its truest essence of our idea of it that pre-pandemic has to be in the room together. But maybe, I don't know, maybe we do find ways to get, save some time at home, or I don't know. That sounds terrible, but I'm so old school still. I'm like, I just want to get in a rehearsal room and have someone yell at me.
I think when we can get back in rehearsal room, there'll be other thoughts, like maybe we have more production meetings where people are not driving into them,
yes.
So that, that's better for the environment too. Maybe, there are probably ways that we can get things done that take care of time in a better way. But I think, like when we were in the rehearsal room, to take the time to do I've often seen rehearsal processes where people are like, oh, well, that stuff is good, Suzuki, blah, 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 but we don't have time to do it. But actually, I think you must take time to do some of these things, because the truth is, by doing those things, we establish an ensemble far more efficiently than we just did.
Yes.
So that was a real eye-opener for me. I haven't always used all of my training in the rehearsal room in that way.
Yeah. And creating that, I mean, there's so many elements that went into creating that space, having, and now as theaters, we have more people in the room and more people, whether or not it's tied to intimacy or whether it's tied to triggering events in a play, or, there's just so much more in the conversation that is about, it's really recognizing what the space needs to be so that the space can actually open up and be nurturing. And I think time is such an important part of it, like figuring out how time works and how time can, I mean, Emily's totally has her finger on it. Like, there's only so long in a day an actor can open up their hearts for only so long, right? You can only do that, and then you're exhausted. People don't understand how tiring that is, right? I want to get this one in. The play excellently displays transformative justice with character action instead of explicitly defining it. What is something you want the audience to understand about transformative justice?
That it's messy, and that healing is messy and not linear, and that healing things like this that are generational and millennia long, I mean, you gotta lance the boil, and like it gets ugly and scary, and you gotta have courage. So yeah, it's like gosh, I'm full of analogies, but it's like a butterfly. It turns to goo in the cocoon before it comes out. Like, we got to allow ourselves to turn to goo in order to really make real change instead of just putting Band-Aids over things,
Are you playing a scientist in your next play? It's a lot of science.
My major to chemistry and biology at different points in my life. I'm glad I did not, but anyway.
As far as transformative justice, I think it's always survivor-centered. I think that's what we need to emphasize on the most, and I think this play does an excellent job emphasizing that. And also, justice doesn't always mean involving the police. It's always what the survivor wants and how they can use that time to heal.
Yeah. Les, you directed it. You have a transformative justice little spirit. Like, what did you ever think? Was that a question that was on your mind?
Transformative justice?
What you wanted the audience to think about transformative justice?
Well, I think we're in a moment of transformative justice. Now, it's interesting because the whole George Floyd aspect of transformative justice that is happening right now wasn't present at the time, but I always have, I've done a lot of plays that are around social justice because I think that theater is a unique place where everybody's in a room together, experiencing something, feeling something. Yes, I love theater that makes you laugh, and I'm sad that you guys didn't see the play because this actually would have made you laugh more than you could realize. But I think that theater's in such a unique place to stimulate our empathy towards people that may be different than we are, may have experienced differently than we are. And so I guess I just really wanted, in the transformative justice of the college situation, I'm going to go broad on this. This is something that I think that we're living in a world right now with social media leading the way as a double-edged sword. It can be a wonderful method to lead us in large movements towards a better world, but it also can be a horrible bludgeon in terms of suppressing variety of viewpoints as well as feelings. And it's hard to have any kind of nuanced conversation on social media. It quickly evolves into something that's very damning one way or another. And I think that this play doesn't do that. In some areas that we consider pretty, cut and dry in terms of bad actions. And for me, and I don't think that transformative justice necessarily does that either. I think it is a process. It's not a one-day thing. It's a long road. Yeah. And so I guess I wanted the audience to sit with all of these people, not just the survivors, but, they're all victims of a system that has basically conditioned them to be a certain way or to endure a certain behavior. And I feel like the play does say there are other ways. So how's that?
I'm going to do a book plug. If you haven't read Cast by Isabel Wilkerson, it's sitting right there. I'm in the midst of it. It's my book for today. It's incredible, and it talks a lot about the structures that you were just talking about, Leslie. So we'll take two more, folks. This one's so take a breath, everybody. And it ends with good vibes. So that's where it ends, but here's where it starts. How prepared are y'all for another 6 to 12 months of doing theater this way?
I mean, like, I don't wanna, but I will. And honestly, I think there is something to be said about film, and I say this in the documentary. There is, Leslie, we created this safe space where you can display your guts, but when you have people watching you, and people are watching you, everything in your lizard brain of like flight or fight response is going, no, don't let them see that. Like, no. And so it's our constant journey as an actor to overcome that every second we're on stage and go, no, here's my real emotion. Or as best we can. It's impossible to do that for 2.5 hours straight, or you'd be a puddle of like, I don't know, goo on the floor. But there is some sort of like protection you get in your safe space and no one else is watching you. And I'm just going to like practice like I practice, my lines and envision myself doing them. And so yeah, I guess it does kind of capture the essence of acting. You can't fake with this guy, like it's gonna catch it. And so you have to go there. You just have to put it all out, and you have to get those guts out. And in a way, sometimes that can be easier when you're like a little cat sitting next to you and making you feel better or whatever, So I will, I guess, if I have to.
It's an interesting time. I think I was thinking about this today because I had an exchange with Michael Wilson, who used to be the associate artistic director of the Alley. We were, texting back and forth, and he was talking about like he has been up in Maine with his in-laws and felt like he was losing his identity. And I said, well, I haven't been in a rehearsal room, and I feel like I've lost, because the rehearsal room is so much about where I live and where I hold myself. And I was thinking about it, I was like, well, this is just sort of actually a great opportunity for me to challenge that and to allow myself to define myself more broadly in various ways. So I've turned, it's been a long road to turn that corner, but the corner is turned. And now I'm just like, oh, there really aren't, the only limit is there's not that room. There are so many places where there are no limits, though, that I hadn't even considered before. So, and I'm still fantasizing about my truck that I drive up to the end of a street and unfold a stage. My itinerant medieval theater model. So but I do think like at a certain point you just have to go, well, this is what it is, and I'm going to challenge my artistic self to go forth and make art.
Yeah.
And the challenge on the producer side, ultimately, folks, is how do we monetize it? Like, that is a legitimate challenge for us right now, because we're not going to compete with Netflix. We're not going to do that. It's not what we were trained or made to do. But we are going to be in this medium. And in fact, I'm happy to say that Stages, and I'm looking over at Peter Tan, who has been doing so much incredible work for us at Stages, not only with this, but with upcoming Woman of the World and with our Stages Studio series. Like, Peter is holding this thing up right now so wonderfully and brilliantly. And I must say, I'm with you, Leslie. I mean, you discover these new doors. To me, it feels like new doors opening. Like, oh, what's in this room? Oh, okay, well, let's try that. Let's figure that out. And so it's figuring out how this changes in terms of the way in which people see its value, because there's great value. The fact that these actors got to tell that story, the fact that they got to do that work and go back in and use new muscles, or the actors in the studio series doing that work, or whatever it is, the fact that these artists are working and changing is critical. It's critical to our health as a community. And so that's why on the stages side, we are so damn committed to making more of it and keeping it going, because it is about health. It's about mental health, spiritual health, and all of that. So the last question I'm gonna take here is just are we going to be doing more of it post, say we all go back to the theater. I think this is all here to stay. I think what's happened is that we get to understand and perhaps be more fluid through the mediums in a way that we weren't before, and actors get to, to say, well, this is what's different here, and make that shift, I mean, if you really note it, nationally, actors really don't, they're film actors or stage actors, and some do go back and forth, but for the most part, not really successfully when they're going back and forth between those two mediums. You're either really great in one or you're really great in the other. And so I think actors are going to be building up muscles of transfer in a way that's exciting for the whole. I do imagine a world where stages will be be using this. This will be a part of the program model. But I do think for me, it's a question of, does the story work in that medium? And why Sensitive Guys was so perfect. It's a college campus. My argument I made with Leslie, before Rachel was Negative Nancy, I had to deal with MJ, the playwright, MJ's agent, and Leslie all going, no, we don't believe in that. Kenn was written for theater. And I'm like, okay, hear me out. It takes place on the college campus, and college campuses are Zoom right now.
My daughter was in her bedroom. She is a Rice student. She was in her bedroom finishing up her semester on Zoom. So, yeah.
That was the argument I was able to make. It made logic sense from an aesthetics point of view, from a storytelling point of view. And it created some interesting things. I mean, I was fascinated by this, watching your faces simultaneously. Leslie and you and I talked about this privately. Like in theater, based on staging, I might see Emily's face for one moment, and then they'll move and I'll see Rachel's face. But to get to watch the faces of all the actors simultaneously, to watch what's hitting them and watch what they're sending out simultaneously is it's very unique. It's not, film doesn't do that. So if, unfortunately, the last question, you can't go back and see Sensitive Guys. It is done streaming for now. But who knows? Who knows what happens?
Midnight. Doesn't it stop at midnight?
I think it does. And also the documentary that does not have a shelf life. Yeah, Mandy just typed in, yes, it ends tonight. So you can see it tonight, and you can watch the documentary anytime. And you can watch all of these talented people at many times at stages in the future, I guarantee you, because I can't stand not being in rooms with any of them. So I look forward to whatever those adventures may be at some point in time in our lives. Leslie is next up directing the Panto with Peter. So that's exciting. And Rachel and Emily, thank you so much for your work. Thank you for your incredible souls and for your commitment to this crazy ride.
Thank you for taking us on it. I mean, yeah, I will never ever forget this.
Yeah. There couldn't have been a better group of people and a better theater and everybody from Josh to Joel, everyone behind the scenes to Mandy and David and Greg, everyone who's helping us now. It was just like a dream collaboration from start to finish. So thank you.
And I just think that when you walk in the new stages, there's that sign that says "People Make Theater," and I just feel that goes. It's at the core of what stages is. We always felt cared for. Kenn always. I would walk into Kenn's office and say, I just really need to get this person to come in and work with us, and he always listened and was supportive of it. And I mean, it's a great place to work, and I feel privileged because I've known this audience now for 15 years, and I was so excited to be able to share this during this time. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you again soon. All right. So wait, what is it? What do I do? Is it this?
It's
that?
Index and thumb.
Do I got it?
Yeah, you got it.
Yay! Hearts, everybody.